Hi, I'm Angela from RS Assessment, which is part of the Hodder-Gibson group. Welcome to the masterclass, which I'm going to chat about for the next 30 minutes, looking at how to assess, intervene and improve with your children. We are looking at PIRA for Scotland for this instance, but we do lots of other assessments that you can do similar things with. So this is just to show you the sorts of ideas of what you can do. So PIRA stands for Progress in Reading Assessment for Scotland, and you use this to actually get a measure of where your children are performing. Next slide, please. So when you're assessing, you've got termly tests that you take in P1 to P7. Like I said, there is maths assessments as well as secondary assessments as well. All of the strands in the PIRA for Scotland reflect the Scottish literacy benchmarks so that you can get really good gap analysis to be able to identify strengths and weaknesses. From there, you then have, after the assessments, targeted interventions that will easily identify which children need which particular interventions and areas of learning. You also get free online mark sheets and reports that are all technology driven, and they are brilliant for being able to pick out whatever type of report that you want to look at, whether it be individual reports or whether it be group or class reports. Next slide, please. So when you're reviewing, like I said, there's lots of reports that you can get, and they all sit within MARC, which can be used by every school in Scotland. It's used really well at the moment for using to get whole school overviews as well as individual and class overviews. I'll go into the reports in more detail in a little while. Next slide, please. So the tests themselves, you can see that in P1 to P4, the tests have got questions and the pictures and the text all together in small bite-sized pieces so as not to overface children. There is phonics scripts that come separately from the papers for the early years to prevent pupils feeling overwhelmed with things. It's all phonically decodable and it's all highly illustrated, so it's very pupil friendly, and there's lots of different types of questions in there. Next slide, please. As you go further up, you can see that it's obviously going to get harder through the tests and through the terms. And you also get, as you go up to P5 to P7, you also get a separate booklet with just the text in, and then the separate booklet with the questions. So they get used to using two different styles of working for assessment. Again, all the way through, bright, colourful, engaging for children. Next slide, please. So the targeted interventions are called SHINE. So you've got your PIRA for Scotland, which is your assessment. You've got your MARC tool, which is free to access. And then from the MARC, you get your SHINE for your interventions. Next slide, please. So on the assessment and reporting kit, MARC, that I've just been talking about, the report types that you can get, your gap analysis. So this can give you an overview of both individual classes and groups to show where the strengths and where the weaknesses are, coming straight from the tests themselves that they've done. It also can give you individual pupil reports to let you see where they're sitting in relation to other people nationally, other children nationally of the same age, and also where that pupil's struggling, how you can help them improve. The pupil progress reports show you test on test data, so you can see from one term to the next how that child's doing, whether if you've done an intervention it's actually worked and they've improved from one test to the other. And you can also do group progress reports as well, so that can be a group or a class. Your group progress reports can be any groups that you have set up in the school. It's not just set groups. So if you were doing SEN or ASN or FSM, anything like that, you can look at whatever groups that you want to look at. You can see comparison reports, so that could be this year's year group to last year's year group, so P1 this year against P1 last year, or it could be ASN against FSM. Whatever comparisons that you want to make can be compared. You get a group analysis report, which is a very quick overview to see where they're sitting against nationally and who's performing out of the boys and girls. You get a group listing report. Again, that can be group or class or academic year if you've got more than one class in the year group. And that can give you all of the children's standardised scores. All tests are standardised, so all standardised scores can be shown, all the reading ages can be shown, where the weaknesses are can be shown, and it can be all done by the click of a button. And then you've also got group combined analysis reports as well. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the reports, you can do a full export of the analysis. So you can see at the side here, you can see that the names of the children are here. You can see their age at time of test is here, and you can see their reading age. Then from there, it goes on and gives you your question by question level analysis. It gives you your score for that child for that question, and it also gives you the facility value. And what that facility value means is it tells you nationally how many children answered that question correctly in that year group. So it lets you see whether it's a difficult or an easy question to be able to use. From there you go on, and in the other page you can also see that you've got the standardised scores, the Hodder scale scores, which is brilliant for SEN children especially. It can be used right across school, but SEN children or ASN children often do very small steps of progress. So the Hodder scale score is absolutely brilliant for being able to show very fine baby steps of progress. The Hodder scale score also is available even if they take the test outside of the age range. Obviously, if a child takes a test and they're not working at level P5, but they're a P5 child, you can give them a different test, but you will not get a standardised score from that. And the reason for that is you can only get a standardised score from age-related groups of children, and because it's a P5 test, it would be age-related against P5 children. So hence a P3 test that a P5 child does wouldn't give a P5 child a standardised score. So the Hodder scale score or the reading age is absolutely brilliant for that. And it also gives you performance indicators of whether they're working towards, working at, or working at greater than expected. Next slide, please. So when you go into this one, you can see that this is where you can input your marks. So all you do is you can sync it to various MIS in school. So if they're using Arbor in school, they can do it that way, or you can do a CSV file upload of all the pupil data, so that when you click into mark and you look at a class, it means that you can then go in and you'll see all the class names for this particular test, and you can start inputting data with just binary data entry, ones and zeros. Very simple, very quick to use. And when you've done that, it gives you all of the different analysis and reports that you need at the click of a button. You can also see strand level analysis here. You can take your gap analysis export off as a spreadsheet here for a class or as a whole school as well. Next slide, please. So the individual pupil reports look a little bit like this. So you've got your standardisation curved bell here, and you can see that this particular pupil here, Christian, is doing Puma Autumn, year 2, I think that one is, and it's an individual pupil report. It gives you the pupil details of what they're in and what they're a member of group-wise, and then it says, right, Christian's working just below the top of the curve, so they're within the average bracket. So at the top of the curve is where most children sit within that class, within that year group. So you can see that they're just below the curve, so that they're doing okay, but you obviously would like them to get as strong as you can. So in the gap analysis, this will show you your strand level analysis. So it'll show you where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are. You can see that as pictorials, or you can see it all as data underneath, and it says how many questions out of how many that they got right. You can also see predictions of the Hodder scale score going forward over the next 3 terms. And in the data here, you can see their age at the time of test, the raw score, the average score, the standardised score, age standardised score, percentile, Hodder scale score, maths age, and whether they're flagging up as a concern or not. That concern column only flags up if the reading age is a year or more below their actual age in years and months. Next slide, please. If you're looking at pupil progress, you can see test on test data. You can see here that there's 4 different tests showing here. The cat's whiskers, as I call them here, are where they should be sitting to be in the nationally average bracket. So you can see that this child consistently is under the national average. So under here, again, is your gap analysis. So it lets you see, A, where the weakness is, if that weakness gets better in the following term, and if you've done intervention, you'd hope to see it in this last one, as it has here, it's risen. So you can see each strand comparably and lets you see whether they're strong in it, whether they're getting weaker in it, whether they're getting weaker still in it, and whether they're getting stronger from one term to another. It will also show all of that data and all of the standardized scores as data underneath the pictorials as well. So you've got both elements there. In the group progress reports, you can look at the progress over term to term of a group, a class, or an academic year. So in this one, it's showing you the autumn, spring, summer, the autumn, spring for period for years 3 and years 4, for an example. It shows you splits between boys and girls. It shows you the standardized scores, average, and the raw scores, and it shows you the lowest and the highest averages as well. And it also shows nationally if they're sitting where they should be. Next slide, please. You've also got your group comparison report. So this is what we were on about earlier, where you can look at various groups. So it could be that you're looking at ASN against FSM, against pupil equity funded children, against non-pupil equity funded children, and so on. And it'll let you see that with all of the different key codings down here, data wise or pictorially. All of these slides are available for you to be able to look in more detail. I understand that they are quite small, and also you can take, you can put your business card in and we can send information and we can talk you through any of it individually if you'd like us to. The group analysis report here, that's just giving you a full overview of the group or the class that you want to look at. It shows your green is your school average and the purple is the national average. So it lets you see where your class is performing against nationally, and it also splits into the individual pupils. So you can see who's strong and who's weaker, and then you can click into that person and see how you can help those children become stronger. Next slide, please. So this is your group listing report. So this could be any group, any class, or an academic year. So if there's more than one class in that year group. In here, it'll show you all of the children's names. It'll show the age at time of testing, years and months against their reading age. It'll show you the standardized score, and it also shows you a color coding to say whether they're working at, working below, or they're working at greater depth. Over at this side, you've got your gap analysis, so it'll show you all your different strands. In brackets near that strand heading is a number, and that's the number of marks that were available in this particular test that's been done by this class. So straight away, a class teacher can look down the list and see who in the class is working well below what the total number of marks were. So again, assessing for weaknesses in a really clear and quick way. You can also see proportions matching expectations in a pie chart here. And again, your key to the colour coding is here. So you can see the ones that are working towards and the ones that are working at or beyond. And then you can also see your strand level analysis and how you're performing compared to national statistics. Next slide, please. You've got your combined group analysis as well here, so it'll show you your boys against your girls, and again your class average and national average. Next slide, please. The partners that you saw on there as well, Arbor, Assembly, and so on. So there is partners that you can sync with if you wanted to. So we've done the assessment. You've also seen all of the reporting. So to help you intervene and improve digitally, to save you lots of teacher time, we've also introduced something called Shine. And this is another 2 reports that you can use to get targeted interventions directly from the assessments. So you've done the assess, Now we're going to do the identifying, intervening and improving. Next slide, please. So, as we said, you administer the PIRA for Scotland first and do the assessment. Next slide, please. The next step is to put your information into Mark, and it'll give you a wealth of reports that we've already gone through. And then you've also got 2 extra reports, which are Shine reports, which I'll go into now. Next slide, please. So when you go into the intervention reports, this is an individual pupil. So you would pull off this report out of Mark, just the same as all of the others. So this is looking at Ben. He's done NTS reading. Year 5 spring. It shows his recent scores for spring, summer, for years 5 and years 4 papers that he's taken, and also the standardised scores. And what it's going to show you here, you can see the various strand level analysis that you can see. It shows what they're scored in this particular paper, and it breaks it down into where the scores were. So you can see they got 1 out of 2 for retrieval in text and 1 out of 2 for summary. They didn't get any in structure of text. In comparison, that wasn't tested in this particular test. So because this has been highlighted as needing some extra support, there is then suggested learning sequences here, and you get fiction and non-fiction learning sequences to help out. You've got those for retrieval, for vocabulary and for inference as well. These learning sequences are very easy to use. All you need to do is click in the hyperlink and it'll take you straight into all of the planning and remedial support to do that intervention. Next slide, please. If you're doing an intervention report for a group, again, it makes life really easy for you as a teacher. It means that you can identify out of your whole class who needs the same intervention. So you can group children together really easily to be able to put them into a group for intervention and give them the learning sequences that are highlighted as needed. So in here, you can see that all of these children have scored below where they should have by enough to be able to highlight an intervention is needed. Your suggested learning sequences are here for fiction and non-fiction for retrieval, the same for vocabulary and the same for inference. You will also see in some cases another learning sequence for poetry as well. And it's up to you whether you use all of them or just some of them, and then review this and review the impact of it and see whether you want to then go on and do an extra one. Next slide, please. So when you look at a maths report, if you're doing the Rising Stars RS assessment Shine maths for the Puma as well as the PIRA, you do get a Shine report for maths as well. So this would look a little bit like this if you were doing the maths. So you've got your strand for your number and place value, your calculations and so on, but then it breaks it down into various areas of learning underneath. So you've got number, written addition and subtraction, mental multiplication and division, and it shows the questions that were used for that area of learning. It then tells you the score for that individual pupil, and it shows you the suggested learning sequence for that pupil for each different area. If it says not applicable, it means that they've actually scored above the Shine threshold, or a question hasn't been asked on that particular area. Next slide, please. If you're looking at grouped intervention reports here, again, you can see what areas it's looking at, and then it breaks it down into your smaller bite-sized pieces. So this is looking at number within number and place value, but then in calculation, you've got 3 different areas that it's looking at in calculation. One is written addition and subtraction, one's mental multiplication and division, and one's written multiplication and division. Again, it shows the group of children who've taken that assessment in that class or that year group as to who needs intervention. So it's only showing the pupils that need intervention on that specific learning sequence. So there might be different pupils that need different areas of the calculation, and it'll highlight that straight from the assessments. So again, all hyperlinks you can click into for those children to be able to take that intervention. Next slide, please. So when you come into the intervention overview, so you've clicked into that learning sequence and it gives you all of your planning. So you've got screens for preparing for it, for doing and for reviewing. So in the intervention overview, it tells you what the learning sequences are for retrieval, vocabulary and inference. It gives you a little bit about the reading accuracy, and it's going to tell you what's inside each learning sequence. So inside the learning sequences for the reading, you've got 2 printable pieces of non-fiction text. And you've also, because we're looking at non-fiction here for year 3 summer term, so P4 summer term, you can see that there'll be 2 printable non-fiction texts. There'll also be 2 printable pieces of fiction text, and in some cases 2 printable pieces of poetry text. So text A is looking at Mary Anning, text B is looking at Charles Darwin. You've got 2 printable sets of questions for the same pieces of text. You've got online modelling responses software, so you can use it on a whiteboard. You've got teacher guidance, including the answers, and you've got vocabulary cards. You've also got record and impact forms as well. It tells you a little bit about what you need to do to prepare for the intervention, and this is really clear and concise to be able to pick up and run with. And the reason we've done it like this, it isn't trying to tell you as teachers how to suck eggs. We know that you've been doing intervention for years, you know exactly what you're doing, but what teachers have said to us when we've been talking to them is they've got that many gaps in learning since lockdown especially. Sometimes it's nice to have a helping hand, something that you can pick up and run with without you having to find these various pieces of text and work out what questions you're going to put around them and how to find the children out as to who needs these learning sequences. So we just made it as a pick up and run resource to try and really help using technology for you to be able to link in and run with that intervention. It's also great because it's got all the guidance and everything. It's also great for teaching assistants as well. The record and impact forms are particularly good for teaching assistants to be able to feed back to you as teachers. Next slide, please. So in the do slide that we're looking at, you've had the prepare, and then it's telling you what to do while you're actually doing the intervention. So it gives you a suggested timetable here, and you can see session 1 is 15-20 minutes, and that's doing your modelling of your text. Session 2 is your independent supported text. They're all aimed at being around 15 to 20 minutes to make them sure that the short, snappy pieces of intervention. You've also got your teacher guidance, so things to be aware of, things that you checking pupils can do and be aware of things that pupils can't do. So things like struggling to decode the words, reading the text from the beginning each time, not being able to find the answer unless the word's in the text and so on. And then it gives you how to introduce the text for text A and text B. Next slide, please. In the review, this basically tells you what your outcomes should be once they've done the intervention, and also where you can make sure that you fill out your record and impact forms. Next slide, please. It also shows what new vocabulary there might be in both pieces of text, and it also gives you next steps, whether they've got high to full marks, a few errors or many errors. Next slide, please. So the actual intervention itself looks like this. So this is non-fiction for P4, and it's for retrieval. So it's text A, Mary Anning, Kate Ruttle, well-known author. We always use really well-known authors. It's a nice size piece of text, really robust to be able to use, and a good piece of length for the age range that it's appropriate for. Next slide, please. And then text B is your independent supported. So to be able to model a piece of text and then ask them to do independent supported text, you want the text to be similar and relevant in size and length. So we make sure that rather than you having to trawl all over trying to find 2 pieces of text, one for modelling and one for independent supported practice, we give similar pieces of text to make your job and make your life easier. Next slide, please. So when you look at the modelling, this can be done on a whiteboard. So this is in the modelling responses software, and it'll also give you your retrieval, vocabulary and inference questions in here. This can be done on paper as well. It's printable as well as being modelling responses software, and you can click on each of these different areas to see all of the questions. Those questions can be shown one at a time or all together. You can also go in and model on the whiteboard using the highlighters and erasers. You can print text, you can save it, and you can show modelled answers as well. In every screen, you've always got a help button to help you be able to make the most of your software. Next slide, please. So your teaching support here shows all of the ways that you're going to be able to teach, practice and apply the following reading skills. So you're going to be able to see how to retrieve and record information and so on. Tells you what to do before the session, what to do during the session and what to do after the session. Can that be scrolled up at all? Next slide, please. So we can give you more information on both the interventions for reading and for math. They're both called Shine, but one is Shine Math, one is Shine Reading. We can give you a full tour of it with the full outlook of all of the interventions and how the planning works and everything, because I'm aware that you couldn't see the whole screens there. It was just to give you a little bit of a taster and let you see a little bit about it. Paula and myself are around all day if you want to ask any questions, or if you want to just ask for our business cards as well, we can get in touch with you later. Has anyone got any questions? Paula's waiting on hand. I'm not sure whether you've asked any as we've gone through, but Paula is on hand to take any questions, and I'm also here to help for the next few minutes before we leave. Next slide, please. So the learning sequences work by using all of your testing. So you can see in autumn term, you'll have sat the assessment paper in November, and then you will get the reports from the November assessment, which then will then give you interventions from the autumn assessment for doing in November. Then you've got your spring term, and then you've got your summer term. So you've got different interventions for every single assessment for the autumn, spring and the summer. The Shine cost is £400 for an annual subscription for the whole school. When you see the amount of content that's in there, every school that I talk to says what good value for money it is. If you go for both the Shine Maths and the Shine Reading, you can get a 10% discount, but further discounts for assessments and everything that we've talked about are available through myself or Paula if you come directly to us. Next slide, please.
Angela, we have a question.
Okay.
Are there any plans to extend this to other subjects such as primary science?
There is plans to extend it to other subjects such as grammar, punctuation and spelling at the moment. That's due out very soon. There is other assessments that we do for science that work in a similar way, but the more short, like pre-test to find out what they know, what they don't know at the beginning of the test, during the assessment and after the assessment as well. So yes, we have other things for science as well.